But long term, doing things the right way and then surrounding yourself with people who are principled and people of values, that is success.
Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. This is Todd Durkin, and I am fired up today yet again for another episode. And my folks, today, I'm talking success, I'm talking excellence, and I love interviewing pioneers, trailblazers, people who are making a difference in the world. And today, you're going to meet my good friend, Kelli Masters. I've known her for over a decade, and she's a sports agent who is considered one of the most influential women in sports today. So buckle up. You're in for a treat today. And also, a huge shout out for all of you who are flooding my inbox with comments, with reviews on iTunes. I got to give you a shout out. As a matter of fact, I got a personal letter in the mail. Imagine, snail mail. I got a letter in the mail from a gentleman who shares this. Check this out. I want to write you this letter of thanks for the inspiration and encouragement you instill. I originally found out about you last winter when I was looking for new and exciting workouts and research to see what Drew Brees does. My job also is physically demanding and requires me to be in good shape for a number of different situations I may face. This led me to some of the videos with Drew and onto some of your programs as well. I really enjoy the programs because you focus on making sure you get a good warm-up in. Your workouts are fun, dynamic, and challenging. On days when I was struggling, I would hear your voice in my head. Get your mind right. Get your mind right. And I would push myself to the finish. Haha, like that. As a result, I also came across some of your videos of your seminars and the impact way of life. When I saw you started doing podcasts, I was interested in what TD had to say. What started as, I'll see what the first one is like, has led to weekly downloads of your podcast show. I must confess, I am typically not the one that listens to podcasts, nor am I typically into the rah-rah style talks. They often feel contrived or not wholly real. But there's always been something to yours that feels different and authentic. The enthusiasm and energy you have is infectious and inspires me to challenge myself to be better. From episode number 1, I was locked in. In the last few months, I've been hit with a serious setback in my life, and I'm in the fight of my life. In all aspects, it has affected all aspects of my life, from work to family to my ability to participate in daily activities. It's shown me how blessed I am and lucky I am to have friends and family that are in my life. Everyone has been extremely supportive through this adversity. Even people I didn't think I was overly close with, or people I had not only recently met, all of them have stepped up and offered their support and stand behind me. This is where you really have impacted my mindset. I've been trying to find ways to remain positive and get into a healthier place. Over the last couple of months, all I've heard in the back of my mind is this voice. Get your mind right. Get your mind right. Some days it's loud, other days it's quiet. Some days have been really dark and lonely, but it's always been there. Get your mind right. I really turned to your podcast for encouragement and didn't realize the effect it has been having on me subconsciously. I've started listening to them prior to this bomb dropping, but since then it's been therapeutic, and I recently listened to the 2-part series with Mr. Wayne Cotton. Wow. Just wow. I was blown away with that one. I was glad I had sunglasses on in the car that day because I was brought to tears. And by the way, folks, that's episode 28 and 29, $1 Million Mentor and Hell and Back. And then lastly, he says, I was thinking of what to put in my gratitude journal the other day and thought about your show. I am truly appreciative for the lessons I'm taking away from it and felt the need to personally express how grateful I am. Let me tell you, my friend, I was brought to tears when I opened that letter and heard from you, because it's letters like that that inspire me to deliver episode after episode 2 times a week so I can change lives globally and make this world a better place. So keep those notes coming. I don't care if it's an Instagram DM. I don't care if it's an email. I don't care if it's in snail mail, or please, if you can write a review on iTunes. That really helps us make more of an impact. That brings me to yet another great episode today. You're in for a treat. My great friend Kelli Masters, super sports agent, is going to be on the show today. Now, check this out. Kelli's the founder, CEO, and chief player agent for KMM Sports Marketing and Creative Agency. She's widely recognized as one of the most influential women in sports business today. She has represented more professional athletes than any other woman in the industry, having served as an agent contract advisor to players in every NFL draft since 2006, as well as numerous players in the MLB draft. Since its inception in 2005, KMM has negotiated in excess of $120 million for their clients through contracts, endorsements, and settlements. In 2010, she made history as the first woman to represent a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Kelli's just one of a handful of female sports agents today. She's a graduate of the University of Oklahoma College of Law. She began her professional career as a business litigation attorney in year 2000. Within 5 years, she became a partner and shareholder at her firm. Kelli ultimately veered towards sports law and began representing Olympians via Kelli Masters Management in 2005. Specializing in combine pro day training and preparation, draft analysis, contract negotiation, and grievances and arbitration, KMM Sports has represented 85 former and current athletes. Kelli was recently recognized as one of the top 25 most influential women in sports, along the likes of, have you heard them? Serena Williams, Condoleezza Rice, Lindsey Vonn, Stephanie McMahon, Erin Andrews, and some other amazing women. She's been featured in USA Today, ESPN, Southern Living, Cosmopolitan, New York Times, Bleacher Report, and the list goes on and on. As her reputation for outstanding work continues to grow and inspire countless others, she's further expanded the reach of KMM Sports to other athletes and celebrities. But before I introduce you to Kelli, what most people don't know is that Kelli was a former national and world champion baton twirler, and she was also Miss Oklahoma in 1997. Her first book, called Dream Jobs, coming out here in 2020, and she's now speaking at colleges and events nationwide on sports, leadership, diversity, and discovering purpose in life. Without further ado, my friends, let's go out and meet the one and only Kelli Masters. All right, folks, we have the one and only Kelli Masters on the line. How you doing today, Kelli?
I'm great, TD. How are you?
Man, what a resume, and I am so pumped up for our listeners today to hear all about what you're doing, the impact that you're creating, and thank you for what you do, girl.
Thank you so much. Well, you were a cheerleader from the beginning for me, and I could not have done it without the cheerleaders in my life, that's for sure. But thank you.
We all need cheerleaders, right? We all need cheerleaders. And speaking of cheerleaders, I just shared about your baton twirling. All of your prowess in that. Do you still every now and then go out and twirl the baton, or no?
Every once in a while I do. I actually twirled in front of 85,000 people a couple of years ago for homecoming at the University of Oklahoma at a football game. And I had so much fun. I used to get so nervous when I was like actually performing and competing. And now I'm like in my 40s, let's just rock this. Let's just do this. It was so much fun.
I remember that. I remember when you were telling me you were going out to Oklahoma to do that, or over at OU. And what's it like? One of the most influential women in sports today. I mean, that you probably had that title now for a dozen years, but just nowadays, you hear some of the people that are listed on that. What's it like? How do you feel? What does that mean to you?
I don't think that was never a goal of mine, was to be the most anything or the first woman to do something. I just wanted to be excellent. I wanted to find my purpose, and I wanted to be excellent at it. And I honestly, for so many years, have been so focused on, my personal battles and winning and finding victory in my personal battles, that when that article came out and people started sending me links like, oh my gosh, congratulations, you're being called one of the most influential women in sports. At first I went, really? I was shocked, and then just so honored and so humbled when I looked at the list of amazing women that I've looked up to. And I suddenly realized, this journey has not just been about me.
Mm-hmm.
It has not just been about personal victories or personal struggles or the battles that I've had to face. It's what am I doing, by persevering through this. Um, I'm hopefully inspiring a lot of women and impacting and influencing, thousands or millions of other people. So I'm just
Is
going to
that
keep
what drives you today?
my drive. It has. I've seen a transition
Hmm.
um, in
Mm-hmm.
my goals. My mentality is, yeah, I still want to be personally excellent, but it really is, what is the legacy that I'm building? I work with the players that I get to represent. What is your legacy? What is your purpose?
Mm.
What were you put on this earth to do? Let's focus on doing that, and therefore impacting culture and impacting the community and impacting the world. And I'm now realizing that applies to my life too, and that applies to really
Absolutely.
any of us that are striving to achieve excellence. Is we want it to last longer than ourselves. We want it to
Mm-hmm.
be we want to make an impact on the lives of others. And so, yeah, that's much more real to me now, and much more on my kind of in my everyday mindset as I'm
Don't you
going.
think? Don't you think that's? I think when you look at high performance in any industry, any career, the constant perpetual desire for growth is
Yeah,
a dominant factor. And in your, man, in your career, that's something now, as you've evolved, so has KMM Sports evolved, right? It's come a long way.
absolutely.
And now what? 85 plus athletes in the entire, all the people you've worked with, men and women, by the way. It's not
Yeah,
just football and baseball, but Olympians and
yes.
the array of people. I think that's a testament to you and your constant desire to improve also.
It's amazing when we take the lid off and we really do try to be excellent, but not try to box in and say, okay, I'm just going to have success at this, in this industry, and it looks like this for everybody else, so I'm going to achieve that. I'm going to work
Mm-hmm.
to achieve success like everybody else in my industry. And no, it's so much bigger than that for me, and really for anyone
Yep.
that wants to achieve great things. It if you allow it, it can be so much more and so much bigger. Again, if you take the limits off, take the lid off. And then
Yep.
always for me, and I know this is the same for you, and I hear you talk about this, it is also being excellent and being principled in what you do. It's not just about winning.
Right.
It is not just about looking like the best to the world. It's how do you do it? The way you do
Mm-hmm.
anything is the way you do everything, just like you always
Ah, I
say.
love it. I love it.
So do everything the right way. Do everything with excellence. Don't cut corners. Don't look for the easy way out or the fast way to the top. And I think that's what I see and kind of battle against now in my profession is young people have grown up with social media. They're
Mm.
looking at YouTube stars that are just famous for doing videos. They're not necessarily famous for working hard for years and years unseen, and then finally performing well on a big stage. They're looking at people that look like they're having overnight success
Mm-hmm.
because of social media, and I think that's dangerous. For me, it's I want to inspire people to dig in and do the work and be
Mm.
excellent and commit to the process. I
So let
think,
me ask you. Let me ask you this: with KMM Sports, then, how
yeah,
do you differ than all of the agencies out there because of you're principle based? You have
yeah,
amazing core values. How do you differ? How does KMM Sports differ than many of the other agencies out there?
yeah. Well, and that's what I believe still to this day sets us apart.
Mm.
We refuse to compromise, and our athletes know that. And I feel like that would be common sense that if I were an athlete or if my child was an athlete, I would want someone to work with my child that did things the right way, that was principled, that had a moral compass, that didn't, wasn't just like willing to do anything and everything, whether it was, ethical or whatever, just get the win.
Mm.
That's so common in my industry, in sports agency. It's, well, we know these are the rules and this is the right thing to do, but, that's going to hold us back if we follow the rules. No, it's maybe it will in the short term, but long term, doing things the right way and then surrounding yourself with people who are principled and people of values, in the long run, that is success.
Mm.
And I think that to this day still sets KMM apart. Do we have the most athletes? No. Have we done the biggest contracts? We will. We've
Yep.
done some really good ones. But that's the money alone is not our goal. Our goal is lives. Our goal is impact.
Mm.
And standing for something, standing for excellence in the way, not just in the results, but the way we get there. And that's what makes us different.
I've got a big smile on my face right now because I have seen that firsthand. And in your business, in sports agencies, it's predominantly dominated by men, right? It's what 90+% male.
Oh, yeah.
And I have sat in living rooms with you, talking to parents and athletes, listening to why an athlete should work with you. And the number one thing that I say to myself when I hear you is trust. I trust you. I know you. And I think that's a huge thing with anyone today is, do I trust her? Do I trust him? And would I put my eggs in this person's basket? And I think that's something that you have always exemplified, Kelli, you and your team, in doing it the right way. You talk about, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. You've always done it the right way. And for that, man, I congratulate you for not only a few years of success, but many years of success.
Thank you. Well, as you know, it has not been easy. It has been a battle.
Well, take me back. Speaking about, take me back. Like, why in the beginning and how did you become a sports agent? Like, why did you say, all right, I'm going to be a sports agent? Right? Was it like a Jerry Maguire moment?
I tell everyone that Jerry Maguire actually came out the first year of law school for me.
Huh.
And I remember most of my class, like all the guys in my class, that's what I want to be. I want to be Jerry Maguire. And I was like, y'all are crazy. No, that's not, that wasn't even on my radar.
Right.
Great movie. I'm like, no, that is not on my radar. And so I went into a very normal, and now I like to say very boring law practice. I was good at what I did, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I found my joy in working with nonprofit organizations. So that's kind of where I started my law practice 20 years ago, which is hard to believe. So 20 years ago, I became a litigator. I started working with nonprofit organizations. And 5 years into my law practice, I was on my way to becoming a partner in my law firm. Actually became a partner in my law firm, but I got a phone call from a former NFL player and his family, and they had set up a foundation and they were looking for a lawyer. They had run into some issues, and of course, lawyers have job security because there are issues. And so I was hired to clean up the mess that had become, that their foundation had become. I did that. And that just opened the door to conversations and to questions from me, questions from the player and from his mother. And just looking at me in one of the meetings and saying, where were you when we started this journey? Where were you in the beginning? We would have loved to have had someone like you in our corner. And that was the first time I ever opened my mind to working with athletes. I'd been an athlete growing up. Those were my people, but I didn't have anyone, no one was modeling, a woman becoming an agent. And I didn't know any sports agents. I'd only seen movies. And so I had no idea what I was getting into. So I spent about a year really praying about it, learning as much as I could about the industry, calling and talking to anyone that would talk to me. Got a lot of slammed doors in my face. Everyone told me, forget about it. It's not going to happen.
Not taking you seriously?
I think almost in a sense trying to protect me and say that's just not a career. That's not a good career for women. That's not a good career for you. It's, it's dirty. It's corrupt. You've never played football. You've got a successful law practice. What are you doing? But the more I persevered in that, the more the fire inside of me just got bigger and bigger. I'm like, I know I'm supposed to do this.
Was it the people saying that you couldn't do it that drove you? Do you think?
That was part of it because, if you are a high achiever, you don't want to hear, well, you can't do that.
Right.
Especially just because of my gender. That was something that I couldn't buy into. And again, not, when I first made the decision, I'm going to pursue this, I didn't think about being the first woman to do something. I was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I know in my heart, I'm going to be great at this and I'm going to bring excellence to the table that other people aren't. And I don't care if I don't look like everybody else or if my personality is different, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to do this.
What year was that?
Yeah, that drove me. 2005.
And were there any women agents before that?
There had been some women who had worked in offices, like firms, who had initially not been agents, but had taken the test so that they could be part of the representation process. And that had happened I think there had maybe been one or two women that had technically become agents, although no women had started an agency.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. And so I was the first woman to independently decide, I'm going to be an agent. I'm going to start an agency. I'm going to call it KMM. I was the first woman to step out and do that. And I remember going to the combine and being the only woman, you've been to the combine in Indianapolis. You've been part of it. It is all the testosterone in the world crammed into about 4 square blocks downtown Indy. And I was there in the middle of it. And I have to admit, like a few times I had to run to the bathroom and get myself together and go, you got this. Like, you can do this. Everyone's staring at you. Everyone's whispering, like, who's the girl? But that I think that in a way that made me dig down even deeper and fight even harder.
What's amazing is that mentality. I'm thinking is, what? Just a few years before that, you open your practice. Here you are, like what, Miss Oklahoma, doing beauty pageants, and now you're in downtown Indianapolis, in the exact opposite of a beauty pageant.
Although it's funny because the first time I saw weigh-ins, and you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Trying to walk up there in their underwear and weigh and measure, and I'm like, hey, this is like Miss America. This is like competition. I got this. And then they did the interviews. I'm like, oh, this is my world. I got this. It's just guys instead of girls.
And so far from pretty. And they ain't pretty.
Not pretty.
So obviously 2005, you're a pioneer. I mean, if as a pioneer in the sports agency business, and now even in evolving many different ways, what would you say? There's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs, like anyone, and especially when you're one of the first in an industry. What do you think are a few of the hardest parts of your job that no one knows about? Like, I think people think, oh, sports agent is all glamorous and you're signing $1 million deals, right? Like, paint a picture of what are some of the harder part of your jobs?
How long is this podcast? I remember there's a quote in the movie Moneyball where I forget who, maybe it's the Red Sox owner that's talking to Billy Beane, and he says, the first one through the wall always gets bloody. And that was me. There were so many, when I first started recruiting, and I would say recruiting is probably the hardest thing that I do. It's not just, everybody knows who the top athletes are going to be. Everybody wants to talk to those guys. So it's figuring out first, how do I get in touch with them? Then how do I convince them to sit down and listen to what I have to say? And then from that initial meeting, how do I build a relationship?
Right.
And how do I develop trust? And when I got started, not only was I new, no one had seen a woman actually going out and recruiting football players to represent. And so I would walk in the room and the parents would look stunned, and the player would be like, whose assistant are you? Where's the agent? Like, I'm the agent. It's me. You got me. And so I think first overcoming that, and not because of prejudice, I don't think, not because of being sexist or anything. It was just women didn't do it. And,
that's right.
It was new. And most football players, other than their moms, don't really have women that are part of their football careers. You were seeing more and more women. We were seeing more and more women in coaching, in scouting,
officiating,
referee. Yes. So we're seeing more and more women get into the business side of football, and even the coaching side of football. But when I started, that was non-existent. And so first overcoming those, I think just the stigma initially that, well, are you capable of doing this? Is a woman capable of understanding everything that an agent needs to understand and advocate for a player going through the draft? Is that possible? And I didn't really get offended at that. I just felt like, okay, this is my opportunity to educate people. This is what an agent does. And so I went about that education process and that recruiting process. And man, I was so precocious even in the beginning. Even if it was a first rounder, I was going to get a meeting. And I may not win, but I was going to get in that room and I was going to at least put the idea in their head that I could do this.
I love it.
And I just kind of kept pounding on doors until the doors finally opened. And so that recruiting was the hardest part and still is.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. As a matter of fact, before you hear the rest of the amazing story, let's hear a word from one of our sponsors. Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by my friends over at Carnison Beta Alanine. Let me ask you a question. Who's looking to amp up your workout routine, your training routine? You want to get stronger, faster, more explosive? You want to improve your endurance? Well, my friends, Carnison Beta Alanine is an ingredient found with many of the top pre- and post-workout supplements. Along with the right training program and the proper nutrition, you got to eat right. Carnison Beta Alanine is going to help build your strength, endurance, and your power. How do you do it? Well, essentially 3.2 grams a day. You want to essentially get 90 grams over a 28-day period, about 3.2 grams per day, and you're going to love the way you feel on it. I've been using it for over 20 years, literally on my workout days, on my non-workout days, and I endorse it heavily with my athletes. Why? Because when you're looking for the edge and when you expect the best out of your body, you got to make sure you eat right, you train hard, you're constantly living inspired. And my friends over at Carnison Beta Alanine have the best product on the planet. Over 55 independent studies show that it has 0 banned substances. That's an important thing. You always want to put the right stuff in your bodies. Go to team.carnison.com. Check it out in the Find It section. You go to your local health food store or just go to team.carnison.com and pick some up today. So speak more about that, because you think about recruiting or prospecting, how you find the right people for KMM Sports. I know you love football. I know you love sport. How many weekends would you say in a fall do you go on the road and drive from Oklahoma to another state or even fly because you have a potential client that you want to evaluate? How much of that is now you're on the road versus watching film?
I am on the road really constantly. And it's year round. It's not just during football season. I mean, I started actually counting. I go to approximately 35 football games a year.
Wow.
In person. That doesn't count watching film. That doesn't count watching things, games that I've taped or people sending me huddle links. And so I watch a lot of football and I love it. I really do. But it's, to me, I go to games, I could watch a player on film and figure out, okay, is this a prospect or not? I go to games because I want to see the player in person. There are things that you see and you notice about body language when they're coming on and off the field, how they're interacting with their coaches, how they're interacting with their teammates, how after the game they're interacting with fans and with their family. I want to know all of that, because to me, it's not just can the player perform, but what kind of a person is he? And does he have the heart? Does he have the intellect? Does he have everything that it takes to be a KMM athlete, and to not just make it in the NFL, but to be that excellent person that I look for? I want to work with excellent human beings, and you can't just get that from watching game film. So yeah, I spend a ton of time. And you talk about it being glamorous. Everyone sees when I'm on red carpets or at parties or, Super Bowl sidelines or any of those big moments. But because it's same for you, how many thousands and thousands of unglamorous, if that's even a word, non-glamorous hours you spend that people don't see. I mean, there have been so many, nights I've slept in my car or driven across the country, stopped in places just to see people along the way, and doing whatever it takes. I've slept in baggage claims. I've gotten ready in so many public restrooms. I've lost count. It's not glamorous.
That's right.
It is not at all. There have been times when I've gone to games and I'll get a chance to finally talk to a player, and he'll say, "Hey, meet me tomorrow," and I'll realize Like I didn't prepare to stay overnight, so I just make a run to Walmart and get us into like whatever it takes. You do whatever it takes
Oh,
to make it happen. So
I,
yeah, my
I,
life is fun but not glamorous.
I love that, seeing someone live and the commitment that you have for your athletes. I think it's looking to see if they have that it factor, right? Like you talk about body language and how they're, how they're treating their family or how they're treating their friends, girlfriend, whoever it may be. I think that tells a lot about a person. What brings you the most joy in your job? What keeps you going? I mean, 20 years now as an attorney and 15 plus as a sports agent. What drives you to say, I this brings me the most joy? What is it?
This is going to sound weird, but it is being there with my players in those highly emotion driven moments, not just the wins, even the tough moments. And that sounds kind of crazy, but when a player has been cut, has been injured, is going through something just rough in his life, and he reaches out to me, and we can lock arms, we can pray together. I can speak hope and I can speak truth into his life. I can remind him of who he is and what his real worth is. Those are the moments that I live for. And I love the celebration moments. One moment just recently, I have a punter, the Washington Redskins punter, Tressway, who I've represented since college, coming right out of college. I was the only agent who, left him a message on his cell phone. No one else reached out to him. He wasn't a combine invite. He was not on the radar at all. Went undrafted. Long story short, he is going into his 7th year in the NFL as a Redskins punter. He made the Pro Bowl this year. He is an All-Pro, and I just negotiated his final it probably will be his final contract of his career. And when I called the general manager to let him know that Tress was coming in to sign, he said, "Well, he's already here, and let me let you know we've got a crier on our hands." He is bawling his eyes out because he's so happy.
That's
And
awesome.
it wasn't you're going to get a $3 million signing bonus and $15 million over 4 years. It was the joy and the emotional release of that moment of all the years and even the years and the moments of doubt and the struggle and others not believing in us and others not believing in him and me going and fighting for him to have an opportunity somewhere and then seeing where we are now. And so I think it's not just the joy in the highs. It's the going through the lows.
Yeah.
And keeping your joy and keeping your hope and coming out better on the other side. So those are my moments.
Well, you've always done an amazing job caring for all of your clients and even people who you're recruiting. Like, I think that's the one thing you've worn your emotions on your sleeve, and right, that's a blessing and a curse. But you've always just been so upfront with all your athletes. In the 15 years that you've been an agent, how would you say the industry has changed? Because you think about even athletes now and in a world of social media and highlight tapes, would there be like one or two things like the industry has changed and how you deal with people, how you recruit them? What would be your thought?
Here's what I'm seeing. And I don't even know where this is going to go or how it's going to change. I mean, unfortunately, I see the negatives that have come from social media. And there's so much positive that can be done with social media. The problem is, and that's great, and we need to embrace that and the power of it. I do, that's how I reach the most people is through posting on social media. But players now that I'm recruiting coming out of college, like I mentioned before, grew up with social media. They are all in their own minds already a brand. And they have an idea of what that's going to translate to that may not be based in reality. So that's one challenge that I'm seeing is that all of them think they're going to be on commercials and they're going to suddenly have 1 million followers on Twitter and Instagram. And so that's changed. And I think it's figuring out how to harness the positives of social media while also keeping players focused on, okay, well, to get there, you can't just have, to be a brand, it can't just be about being witty on social media and posting cool videos. It has to be the work. It has to be the process. It has to be putting a great product on the field. So there's so much more to it. The other, and this is just being like honest about the industry, and this is entirely agent created. Agents have started pouring so much resource wise into all players, not just first rounders, but all players that are going through the draft. And it's not just the training anymore. You know, it's where agents are spending $20, $30, $50,000 on preparing players for the combine. But on top of that, they're giving signing bonuses, which are actually illegal under the NFLPA regulations. They're giving these huge stipends where, you know, just this year I was recruiting a player that was probably a fifth or sixth rounder, someone I would have taken in a heartbeat years ago. But the amount of resources that I would have to put into him, I would actually lose money for the first 4 years of his career representing him. And as much as I believed in him, I run a business, not a nonprofit.
Right.
And I have to make business decisions. And that business model not only sets up agencies where you're losing money on players and you just can't compete unless you're part of a bigger company that does other things besides represent athletes. So it's a bad business model for agents, but it's also giving players setting players, I think, up for failure in their own lives because it's not a realistic way to start out. They start out in debt.
Preach.
They start out with this expectation that things are going to be handed to them and not earned before they're earned, rather than, and I'll use this player that I represent right now, Blake Jarwin. Awesome guy. He was not recruited. He walked on out of high school, out of a small town in Oklahoma. He actually paid his own way to go to a Division II school for a recruiting trip, and he ended up being the only one walking out of the weekend without an offer. All the other guys got offers. He didn't get an offer. He walks on at Oklahoma State. He plays at Oklahoma State, earns a scholarship, never really gets to see his full potential there, but earned a scholarship. I took him on as a client, and I was offering to pay for his training, and he said, "Nope, Miss Kelly, I'm going to train on my own at my school. I'm going to get myself ready. I'm fine. You just get to work for me. You know, you do your part, I'll do my part." And he was amazing through the whole process. He worked his tail off. He had a great pro day. He wasn't a combine guy. Great pro day. Went undrafted, but is now, depending on what Witten decides to do, will be the starting tight end for the Dallas Cowboys going into year 4, and has made some huge strides to become one of the top young tight ends in the NFL. And he did it the right way. He didn't say, pay me a $30,000 stipend and send me off to training where you're going to spend another $30,000 and, give me all this money. I deserve it. To him, it was, let's put our heads down and let's go to work. And he handles his finances well. He handles his off the field business well. He handles his business on the field well. He's just very, very focused. And sorry to get off on all of that, but that's where I've seen the industry go, unfortunately, is I think it's agent driven, that we've set these kids up for failure. We've set ourselves up for failure, and that needs to change.
Well, I love that, Kelly. I hear what you're saying is you love working with young men and women who want to work and not be handed something, right? Like old school grinders that want to put time in the gym and make the success on their own and not be handed something. And because today, if someone's coming in is like, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? And there's an agent who's actually feeding them a bunch of hogwash. Well, they could get ballyhooed about what that agent might give them. And to me, that doesn't bring out the grit that's going to be needed to make it in the NFL, MLB, or any other professional organization. So kudos for doing it the right way again, because that's what young men and young women need to have fed into them. Because ultimately, if you're going to have a career, you're going to need that DNA. You're going to have that in you. So thank you. Thank you for doing it the right way, because
it's not easy. It's not. And, and people told me in the beginning, Kelly, you want to do things, I'm hearing you want to do things the right way. You want to do things the hard way. I'm like, if the hard way is the right way, then yes, I want to do things the hard way because it's the right way. And I want to stand for something. At the end of the day, if I don't look as successful as other people, but I have maintained my integrity and I have done things, I have done right by my clients. And even by the guys that I'm recruiting, if I don't sign them, I have stood for something and I have instilled some things and some principles in them, then that's success.
So let me ask you a question. If an athlete who wants to come in and says, I want a brand or I am a brand and they're not yet a brand,
Right.
At KMM Sports, you obviously, the core of what you do is contract negotiation. Do you have other aspects of your business that you address, or do you outsource to other experts in the area, even like financial planning, marketing and branding? If someone wants to set up a 501c3 nonprofit, if they need help with estate planning, if they happen to, to make some money, is that all kept in-house, or do you have a support group of people to say, hey, listen, I have someone who works directly with me? How does that work for you?
So I'm really blessed. I have, over the 15 years, have established just an amazing network, kind of a core network of people that are brilliant at what they do. When I started, I did everything, and
Mm-hmm.
and even as an attorney, I set up
Me
501c3s,
too.
I do estate planning, and that's what
Right.
you do. And it's not
Right.
because you're greedy; it's because you
You
do
have to.
everything. You have
Yeah.
to.
Right.
And there's no other way. And so, I still do a lot, and I still, quality is so important to me, and the product that KMM puts out is so important to me that I still have a hand in a lot. But I've also really learned to, I guess delegate is the right word, but partner with or bring alongside just brilliant, excellent individuals that can handle those
Mm-hmm.
different areas. And so we cover, when a player signs with KMM, everything that we do can be done in-house. It may not be done by me personally, but
Right.
it's going to be done in-house. The one thing that we don't do in-house is financial planning, only because that's considered a conflict of interest.
Mm.
Because we're negotiating the contract, we don't need to be telling him where to put his money
Mm.
after we've already negotiated the contract and been paid for it. So we keep that separate, although we are part of that process of making sure that our players do have solid financial professionals in their lives, and we've learned how to steer them around pitfalls in that regard. And I still have players that will call me and ask for my advice on things, or ask me if they're buying a house, or if they're looking at a business proposition. They still want my input, and I involve my team in that.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't touch their money. That's the one thing we don't do.
Right. Kelli, if there was a young man or woman listening in today who is contemplating going into becoming a sports agent, what advice would you give them?
You caught me on a good day. Some days I'm like, what? No, I always, and what I got when I reached out to people was, don't do this. Like, you're an idiot. Don't do it.
Yep.
It's too hard. It's too corrupt. You'll never make it. I don't approach it that way. I paint a realistic picture and say, here's what the industry looks like. If you want to sit down and hear what the realities are of the industry and what it means to become an agent, what that looks like day to day, what that looks like, short term and long term. Here's what it takes to succeed. I am happy to paint that picture for you. But I also, if I see a kid that has that fire
Right.
in their eyes and that passion, and it goes beyond just loving sports and
Yep.
being really good at fantasy football or whatever, it goes way beyond just loving sports.
Yeah.
If I see someone that genuinely has that passion, that they want to work with athletes and do it the right way and make an impact on athletes' lives, I am not going to crush their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, look, I'm going to reason with you. It's going to be hard. There are going to be a lot of sacrifices. This is not a glamorous profession. The rewards are amazing, but they're few and far between compared to the sacrifices.
Yep.
That's what I tell them.
And how do you work it now? Because you talked about your passion, love for litigation, and you still are an attorney. How much of your time would you say you spend in your KMM agency versus being a litigator or in your law practice?
I'm 95% KMM now. I'm semi-retired from my law practice, which is kind of crazy. I still do some. I handle estate planning for people that are not athletes. I handle 501c3s still. I occasionally will jump into a litigation matter, but not as much. I feel like I sort of retired on top. My last two big litigation cases, one was in front of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. I argued it. The entire law firm thought it was a loser case. I believed in it, and I won at the 10th Circuit, which was awesome.
Wow.
And I argued in front of Neil Gorsuch, which was really cool because that was right before he went on the Supreme Court. And then I actually had a case go to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I won that case as well. So that was in 2012, the Nitro Lift case. And I still get calls about it,
Huh.
wanting to hear how I won. And I'm like, gosh, I haven't practiced law full time in a while. Let me brush up on it. But I reached my goals as a lawyer. I wanted to be a partner. I wanted to win a Supreme Court case. I did it. Hung up the cleats on the litigation side, and really am focused full time on NFL.
Wow. My final question, and that is awesome because it involves that you've evolved, right? You've evolved in your industry and your career from starting as a young attorney and then opening up your, sports practice and then semi-retirement now all came in sports. But you also, I know you recently wrote a book, Dream Big, which is coming out in the next year. And
yeah, I'm following your footsteps, Katie.
yeah, and
Sorry.
you're doing a lot of philanthropic events.
Yeah.
My question is this: for you, it's always been about purpose because I've known you now for a dozen years, and if there was a young girl today that was listening in about like purpose. And she's searching for a purpose. I know you've overcome a lot in your life, and what advice would you give when it comes to finding your passion, finding your purpose, so that you can create impact in your life?
Ooh, again, I wish we had all day. I could talk about this a lot. When I discovered purpose in my life, I didn't even know exactly what it was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that for me, purpose was going to lead me to start a sports agency and become an NFL agent. I just finally knew I had purpose, that I had one. I didn't need to know all the details. I knew what I loved. And so for me, it was shifting from this place where I had been motivated my entire young life by fear. I was motivated by fear of failure, fear of letting my parents down, fear of not being good enough, fear of people not accepting me or liking me. I was so consumed by fear, and it finally came to a point where I just had to surrender and say, okay, fine. I'm not going to live afraid anymore. I'm not going to let those things run my life anymore. I am going to instead not be motivated by fear, but dig in and go, okay, I know I'm on this planet for a reason. I know I have a purpose for being here. And so in the initial stages, it was just, I didn't know what it looked like. I just knew I had one. I just knew Kelli's here for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's not to please anyone else, and it's not to worry about the opinions of others. In my mind, for me, I sat down and started just writing and reading and digging into who I really was as a person. And I think it's identifying what you value, not what your parents value, and family values are important. Obviously, church, all of those things are important, but what is it that's deep inside of you that's important to you? And that's where you find what you're passionate about. That's what you find that's where you find your values, and your values and your passions help you identify what your purpose is in life. And for me, a lot of times people say, okay, so you discovered that your purpose was to be an agent. No, being an agent is my current assignment. That is my assignment within my bigger purpose of impacting lives and serving others. My purpose is to serve. My purpose is to positively and powerfully impact the lives of people that I get to impact. Within that, right now, my assignment is to be the best agent I can be. And so I think that's the other thing that people get caught up in as well. So is my job my purpose? What if my job isn't fulfilling right now? We've all worked in jobs that weren't fulfilling, but they moved us towards our purpose.
That's right.
And they taught us things about ourselves. And so that's what I would say is dig deep, know what you value, know what you're passionate about, and then realize that you have a purpose, and then take on whatever that next assignment is to move you towards that, do that.
And if I know Kelli Masters, the way you've evolved over the last 20 years, I would say that as you continue to evolve, the next decade for you, you'll continue to grow and progress. And KMM Sports will be the same exact thing. It'll grow and progress. You'll probably be writing more books. You'll be speaking more. You'll be empowering more women and men in audiences. And when I hear one of the most influential women in sport, sometimes I want to knock that word sport off for you, because I think you're empowering many, many women and many, many people, and your influence is only growing. And I appreciate and respect so much, and always have, since I've known you, Kelli. So thank you for what you do and for sharing so many nuggets of wisdom today.
Thank you so much, Todd. You are amazing. You have always been one of my favorite, most influential people in my life. So thank you so much.
Kelli, if someone wants to learn more about you, follow you on social media, where's a great place to do that?
You can go to my website, first of all. My agency website is kmmsports.com. My personal website is kellimasters.com. You can connect with me there. I'm on social media, on Instagram at Kelli Masters, and Twitter at KMM Sports.
Good. And guys, I'll put all of that in the show notes too. All that will be in the show notes for you to see. If you didn't catch that, if you're driving and can't write, don't be driving and texting at the same time and writing your notes. So Kelli, thank you so much for today and imparting such wisdom. It was great to connect with you. And
so good to connect with
man,
you.
it's so awesome. Keep creating impact. I'm proud of you, girl.
You too. You too.
Have an awesome day.
You too, Todd.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Kelli Masters. I've known Kelli for over a decade now, and it's been awesome to work with her. And when I was hearing her speak on the podcast, and you hear about engaged success, she was talking about success and what it means to her and finding your passion and your purpose. She also mentioned excellence several times, about being excellent. And when you're a pioneer in your field, when you're just starting out, and you think about Kelli as a female agent, 2005, launching her own business in a world that's dominated by men, of all that she had to overcome to create the success that now is KMM Sports. Quite impressive, and it was great to have Kelli on here, and I hope that you got fired up from that episode today as well. And a shout out again to all of you who are dropping reviews on the Todd Durkin Impact Show. I so much appreciate it. If you could write your review. I love seeing the comments coming in. They fire me up. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and not only give us a 5-star rating, but please write us a review. I read every single review, and there's almost 300 reviews now. We need 300. We want to make this top 10 podcast, and I need your help. So thank you so much for all that you do. Today, go out there and be excellent in all that you do. Peace and God bless.